I'm Cherylanne Skolnicki, and this is Brilliant Balance, the show for working women who are ready to shine. Each week, I bring you ideas, inspiration, and insight on balance, business, and getting it all done gracefully. You ready? Let's be brilliant. This is episode 316 of the Brilliant Balance podcast. Today, we're talking about mindful motherhood, proven strategies for reducing stress. So welcome back to the pod. Today, I have a really important topic for us. I think it's timely as we head into one of the busiest seasons of the year for moms everywhere, where the number of things that we are trying to manage simultaneously is about to increase exponentially. And I think I would really love to help you get out ahead of this a little bit with some strategies that can really help when we're starting to feel that sense of overwhelm or overload or stress. And to set the stage for this, I want to just remind us that mothers today face such an array of challenges and responsibilities, all of which collectively really contribute to a rising stress level, right? In fact, I don't think the demands on working mothers have ever been higher. The expectations that we have of the level we're going to play the game, both at work and at home, are just increasing seemingly year on year. We're not only balancing the workload of our careers, which is often undoable, but also taking on, as the statistics show, a lion's share of household chores and childcare duties. And then you have all of the societal expectations and pressures around appearance and relationships that just add to the load. And I think if we let this chronic stress go unchecked, the older we get, the more we start to see the long-term cumulative effects of it, right? It's like you can do anything for a short period of time, but when you have to continue doing it for weeks, months, years, decades, it takes a toll. And we're not talking about a small thing that we're doing. We're talking about a very large collection of things that we're doing for weeks, months, years, decades. And so we start to see the effects of it on our mental health, our emotional well-being, our physical health, and we need to do something, right? Something has to be done differently for us to just feel better in the day-to-day of our lives. And I think what we do on instinct in an effort to cope with this level of overload is we spend a lot of our week sort of hovering above our life, like skimming the surface of it instead of really dropping in to each and every moment. It's like something in us knows that if we dropped into the moment, we would just drown. We would be so overloaded by the weight of it if we were carrying the full weight of every moment. So we're doing all of these kind of, half-hearted attempts at survival, like quote unquote multitasking, right? Where we think, oh, I'll just do 3 things at once and I won't really be in any of them. Just earlier today, my husband was trying to have a conversation with me and I was trying to finish my notes for this episode. And my daughter was texting from college and we were getting a text from a contractor who's working on our home. And I was like, I am not in any of these things. I couldn't repeat back what he said if you paid me, and I half responding probably with all kinds of typo errors to these 2 people who were texting me. And I certainly wasn't making any progress on my notes for today. So sometimes I think we think we're doing ourselves a service and really we're just kind of skimming around on the surface of a lot of things instead of really living one thing at a time. And there's one very powerful antidote to this pattern, and that's mindfulness. And I'm going to share this with you. Years ago, when I was first starting my coaching practice, I had a client who discovered mindfulness and she didn't invent it. It was new to her and she decided to start studying it. And I will be completely honest, I did not know what that word meant. I don't know if that word is newer to the zeitgeist or if it was just newer to me, but truly, we're talking about this is circa probably 2016. I was like, what is mindfulness? So if you are in that place today, I want you to smile, knowingly go, okay, well, maybe it's my turn to learn what this is. And I would think of it as a collection of practices that are a reminder to be where you are. right? Mindfulness is essentially the practice of being in the present moment, where you've gathered your body and mind in one place at one time to really enable a level of focus and presence that can be difficult to reach otherwise. So if this is a new term to you, stay with me here because I'm going to make this very practical, very applicable in a couple of ways that I think will be helpful to all of us. So let's delve into this world of mindfulness together and look at how it can really give us a set of tools that can help alleviate the stress that so many of us are under chronically. And I will tell you, this is data backed, it's evidence based that these mindfulness practices really have been proven to measurably reduce stress levels and improve overall well being. I'm not going to get into all of the data from like the American Psychological Association today, but suffice it to say, if you want to go do your homework on this, this is not like, oh, that's an interesting idea that she cooked up. This is absolutely evidence based in terms of its ability as a collection of practices to reduce stress. And moreover, mindfulness practices can positively impact other things like our overall mental health, particularly our anxiety levels, our ability to regulate our emotions, right? To be less likely to yell at our kids, less likely to burst into tears, right? Sort of unwittingly. And really can improve the overall quality of our lives. And the best part of all of this, I think, is that it's a really practical and accessible toolkit, even for very busy people, right? This is something that we can really integrate into our daily routine without it taking a lot of incremental time. Okay, I'm not talking about a 90-minute silent meditation. This is something that these are going to be very quick practices that we can sort of pepper throughout the day to help feel better. And I want to introduce you to these practices. I thought about them for a while and I decided to focus on two categories. Again, if you start Googling mindfulness, you're going to go down a rabbit hole that can keep you there for weeks. And that's cool. If you get really excited about this and you want to go learn more, please do. Another search term, it would be contemplative practices. You could go look into that. I think there's a whole great arena of practices there as well. You can just Google the term mindfulness or mindfulness practices, and you'll find lots of stuff. But I'm going to share within two categories what I'm going to call time-centric practices and body-centric practices. And I'm going to give you 4 examples under each one and explain them a little bit so that if you wanted to try something, like by pressing pause on this podcast and trying one today, you actually could do that. Okay. Now, it's probably not a surprise if you've been listening for a while that I am going to include time-centric practices because I firmly believe that the two biggest resources we are trying to get our arms around as working mothers are our energy and our time, right? We are keenly aware that when we have more energy and when it is a higher quality energy, that we are just better equipped to take on the day. And most of us would say we are aware that time is our only truly finite resource, and we really want to make the best of it, right? So I'm going to start with these time-centric practices. And then this is a little less usual for me, but we're going to talk about body-centric practices. Because for those of us who spend a lot of our lives in our heads, where we're sort of very cerebral or we're thinking a lot or things are really cluttered in our minds, our body can really be a shortcut to our brain. We can actually calm ourselves down using our body and bypass any thinking process, which can be really powerful and something that I want you to have at your disposal. Okay, so let's get into these time-centric practices first. The first one that I want you to think about is mindful prioritization. And this is where you would start your day by either listing the tasks that you're going to take on or reviewing them, right? If you already have a list, you can review the list. But before you dive in and start taking action, you take a few minutes to really prioritize that list based on something like urgency or importance. Okay, now, I think about this as a forced ranking, meaning I prefer to really know in my day almost the exact order in which I am going to tackle the tasks that I already know about. And the reason that's helpful for me is because the act of doing that provides a sense of calm, right? When I'm going through the list and I'm saying, all right, what's the very first thing I'm going to do? And then what will follow that? And then what will follow that? Thinking like a chronology where I am prioritizing helps me do a couple of things. It helps me almost live the day in my mind before I am living it in practice, which is calming, right? It gives me a little bit of a vision of what it's going to feel like. It also helps me make micro adjustments. So if I start realizing, oh, those two tasks in a row, they're both really heavy, right? They carry a really high cognitive load. I might shuffle them and give myself something that's a little bit lighter in between. If I'm realizing that near the end of the day, I'm ending up stacked with a lot of stuff still to do, I might reshuffle the list so that I get the most important stuff done earlier, right? So this mindful prioritization practice helps you feel confident that you're focusing on what truly matters most to you, which reduces the stress that's associated with like trying to do everything at once. When we're just looking at that to-do list, in other words, or the task list for the day, they can feel equally weighted. And so we're trying to give them a place inside of a hierarchy, which is a calming practice in and of itself. The second time-centric practice is single tasking. So I sort of winked earlier when I was referencing multitasking because multitasking really isn't real, right? There are very few things where we can do two of them simultaneously. And I've said this in earlier episodes. I would say things where you're listening with kind of one part of your brain and then using your hands with another part of your brain do work. So for example, listening to a podcast or music or book on tape while you are doing laundry or driving or chopping vegetables or putting groceries away. I think that works, right? Because we don't have to think too hard about the simpler task that we're doing with our hands, and our brain can be taking in different information. But I really think there are very few places where we legitimately are doing two things well at the same time. So in a world where multitasking is really glorified, single tasking is a refreshing approach. Because when you're working on one thing and giving it your full, undivided attention, you have that shot at being fully present in that moment. So doing things like I was noticing, this podcast is a great example for me because when I am recording, I am not doing anything else. I've turned off all the notifications on my devices. I've put myself in a quiet room. It's just me and my notes for the show and the app that I record in before I send it to the producer. And it's a really lovely 20 or 30 minutes where I'm getting to give it my full attention to do my very best work. If I were getting notifications popping up the entire time that I was recording this, it would not play as well. Like I think you would hear it in my dialogue with you as more distracted and less clear because part of my brain would be distracted towards some other direction. So that power of giving yourself the opportunity to single task is really proven to enhance productivity, which is a nice side benefit, but it also reduces stress as compared to trying to juggle multiple things at the same time. Hi, it's Cherylanne. Thanks for listening. Did you know that the ideas I share on this show are things I also can help you implement? If you want me in your corner helping you find more time for what fills you up, go to brilliant-balance.com/schedule and sign up for a free exploratory call. Give yourself this time. You'll be so glad you did. Okay, a third time-centric practice in mindfulness is what I'm going to call mindful transitions, or sometimes I call these threshold rituals. This is where you will design a really simple transition between tasks or appointments or phases in your day to give yourself an opportunity to reset and recenter. This is not a long process, y'all. This is just a few moments to take a couple of breaths and clear your mind and decide who do you want to be and how do you want to show up in the next task at hand. So let's say, for example, this is particularly helpful when you are changing roles, like you are in the morning getting everybody launched off to school and work and wherever they're going, you're getting yourself ready. And, there's a sort of a mode that you're in when you're parenting, right? And there's a lot of logistics involved. And then you walk into your first meeting of the day and you need to make sure that you're not momming everyone in the meeting, right? There's a shift into a different energy where now it's time to be in your professional role. By contrast, same thing might happen at the end of the day where you have been in boss mode all day, right? There's been a lot of very direct communication and clear decision making, and you're creating systems and logic and order for the people around you. And then you walk back into the house and somebody wants to be picked up, or they want to be played with, or, your spouse wants to tell you something about their day. And it's hard to shift out of that mode, especially if you've been, on a call the whole way home in the car and your phone is still going off and there's emails coming in and Slack messages and crises unfolding. Right? We're sort of trailing pieces of one element of our day into the next. At a smaller level, it might happen between meetings, where you're still in your mind thinking through the follow-ups from one meeting and you go into the next one and it's hard to be fully present. So these mindful transitions or threshold rituals give you an opportunity to reset and recenter in between the activities of your day before you really move on to the next task. Very powerful ritual that I've been using for years. A lot of women in coaching have picked this one up. And I'll just say, I think it's noticeable to the people around me if I'm doing a good job of this or not, right? When I'm doing a good job of this, my arrival in a new event, whether it's sitting down at the dinner table or showing up to a 2:00 meeting, is centered and calm and I'm all there. And if I'm coming in on two wheels and I haven't really finished thinking about what I did right before that, I think it's visible to the people around me. So it's one that I try to be particularly conscious of. And the fourth time-centric mindfulness practice is, we'll just call it review and reflect. This one can happen at the end of the day. It could happen at the end of the workday, to just take a few minutes and look at what you've gotten done. What have you accomplished that day? Really reflecting on your use of time and then thinking about any adjustments that you might want to make the next day. Inside of Brilliant Balance coaching, we do this as a weekly practice for sure. Like, it's hardwired into the end of the week. We call it the week in review. And it's an opportunity to just take a look back and say, how'd it go this week? Are there places where I would have made different choices with the benefit of retrospect? Is there anything that I want to change about how I'm using my time going into next week? And this is sometimes something that people fight when they fight with themselves about when we're first starting the relationship of coaching, because I think they don't want to make time for it. There's a sense of, oh my God, this is going to take more time for me to look back on my week. Like, who has time for that? I just need to move on. But the mindful reflection here, just 10 minutes of looking back on the week or a few minutes looking back on the day, really can help you fine tune your relationship with your calendar over time. And I think it's once people get the hang of it, it's extremely powerful. It becomes kind of a beloved practice. So those are the 4 time-centric practices: prioritization, single tasking, mindful transitions, or what we might call threshold rituals, and then this opportunity to review and reflect. So next up, we're going to look at body-centric practices, which will take us in a little bit of a different direction. All right, so when we think about body-centric, I mentioned these earlier as these are sort of like the hack to get to your brain without having to really think your way there, right? We want to change our relationship with stress or change our state without having to think our way to a difference. Like, in other words, you know how when you're stressed out, the worst thing somebody can tell you is you just need to calm down. Just relax a minute, and you want to come right back at them with how that's not possible. Well, these body-centric practices sort of get you there without having to get your brain to agree. Okay. So the first one, the most simple, this is, if you do nothing else, you can start here, is mindful breathing. And this can be something as simple as 3 slow, deep breaths, or it can be something a little more sophisticated. 3 slow, deep breaths would just be something like whenever you feel overwhelmed or stressed and you're able to notice it, right? Maybe you feel that you're talking faster, or you're moving faster, or your leg is starting to bounce up and down if your legs are crossed, right? Any of those little fidgets are clicking in. Pausing for a moment and taking just 3 full, slow, deep breaths is a game changer. Just inhale slowly, maybe for a count of 4, hold it for a count of 4, and then exhale for a count of 4. And I want you to see how long this takes. Let's just do one together. We're going to inhale, hold, exhale. Okay, that's 1. Ask yourself, when's the last time I did that today? Have I done it at all today? Right? While I'm talking, you do 2 more, just slow, deep breaths. A simple practice like that can very quickly calm your nervous system, right? It just helps you regain focus where you think a little more clearly. Things stop spinning. I have talked in earlier episodes about the physiological sigh. You can go Google that. That's something Andrew Huberman really publicized broadly a few years ago. You can look at box breathing. You can look at 4-7-8 breathing. All of these are tactics that you can use that are very powerful. But the simplest one, you don't have a lot to remember, are these 3 deep breaths, kind of whenever you need them throughout the day. Great part of a threshold ritual. You can combine that into part of your threshold ritual. Very powerful. All right, the second one that's body-centric, I'm going to call a grounding exercise. This is where you get your feet on the ground. It's so literal. I love that about this one. Often, particularly as women, we sit with our legs crossed all the time. I sit with my legs crossed all the time. Or I will tuck my feet up under me like they're on my chair, or I'm in like a crisscross applesauce position in a chair. I mean, we have all of these weirdo postures, right, that we wrap ourselves into that do not involve putting our feet on the ground. And yet, having both of our feet flat on the ground is physiologically grounding. So what you would do to try this on for size is ideally take your shoes off and place both of your feet flat on the ground. Again, unless you're driving, you can do this right now. If you're driving, don't do this until you bring your car to a stop. But you can put both feet just flat on the ground and you'll start to notice things. You'll notice the sensation of your feet. Maybe they're on carpet, maybe they're on hardwood, maybe they're on tile. Very best way to do this is to be outside in the grass. There are particularly grounding energies when you can do this outdoors, but you're feeling the connection between your body and the earth. And there's a kind of a sense of reconnecting yourself to the earth's energy. Whereas if you think about it, again, literally, if your feet are up off the floor, you're not grounded to the earth's energy. That is our opportunity to do it. So if you combine those 3 deep breaths with having your body grounded by placing both feet onto the earth, very powerful sense of like, I am okay. I'm on solid ground. I'm on firm footing. Think about all the metaphors we have that use some collection of words that mean I'm grounded, right? And there's a reason for that. Third body-centric practice is a body scan. This does not involve a machine. This is where you would take a few minutes to notice how you're feeling from the top of your head to the tips of your toes. So you can do this with your eyes closed. That's probably ideal, although you don't have to. But so if you're driving, you don't do this one right now, but you would sort of close your eyes or keep your eyes open and start by bringing your consciousness to the top of your head and slowly moving your attention, like your mental attention, downward through your body, over the tops of your ears and the front of your face to your chin and your jaw, into your neck, and then into your shoulders, down through your biceps, to your elbows, to your forearms. I'm going kind of quickly through this, to your wrists, your hands, your fingers, right? And then you can kind of come back up, work your way to your shoulders, and then down your chest, your belly, right? So you're just going to keep moving, top of your head to your toes. And what you want to be noticing is really anything that catches your attention, any areas of tension or discomfort in particular, places where you might be holding a posture without even realizing it, I will almost always notice during a body scan that I have my shoulders tensed up too close to my ears, and it will be a cue to drop them. I'll sometimes notice that I'm holding a particular muscle in a contraction that can be released. I've heard a prompt when you're doing this of like release your tongue from the roof of your mouth. So often while you're doing this silently, your tongue will sort of take its place at the roof of your mouth, and the cue is to drop it. So you're just pulling physical tension out, body part by body part, all the way through to your toes. And it can also remind you of things like maybe you need to use the restroom. Maybe you're really thirsty. Maybe your sweater is too warm and you need to take it off, right? So little things that we have just stopped paying attention to in terms of body awareness can come back into our consciousness, can make these little adjustments. And they're a reminder that like, hey, we're a human and we have some human needs that we can tend to in the moment. Doesn't have to take a long time. I love this one during a short break. Like if you have a few minutes between meetings or a few minutes before you have to pick a kid up from practice, that's a great time for a body scan because you have time to make the adjustments as well. And then the fourth practice that fits under body centric is what I'll call mindful movement. And this is where you're going to maybe make a few stretching motions, like just gentle stretching, even seated in your chair, focusing on the sensations in your body as you move it. You could also do this one by taking like a walk without music, without a podcast, just listening to your feet hit the ground, right? And keeping your eyes on the horizon. That would be another opportunity for mindful movement. It could be a series of yoga postures, particularly if that's already comfortable for you. If you have a yoga practice, you might be able to move through some postures without any cueing. But the notion of bringing your attention to the stretch, the movement in whatever way feels good to you is just a reminder again, like, hey, I have a body. I'm not just a mind. And a lot of the stress that we are carrying is living up in our mind. So if you think about what I'm trying to do today with all 8 of these practices, the time-centric practices are a bit of an opportunity to clear your mind, right? To come back to a prioritized list, to do one thing at a time, to transition carefully so that you're doing one thing at a time, to give yourself the benefit of reflection so that you can make adjustments, right? Those are mind clearing activities. The body-centric ones are the reminder that you have a body, that it has needs, that it's supported, that you can move it. And it's a reminder that we are more than just our mind. So as we wrap up today's episode, I really want to emphasize that these practices are not a luxury, right? Mindfulness is not a luxury. It's actually a necessity, particularly when you are a busy, time-starved, overloaded, professional who is trying to raise children at the same time. We have to take care of our mind and our body so that we can take care of other people and so that we can feel better. So these are such clear ways to reduce stress, to improve our overall sense of well-being, and really to find more balance in our lives in the truest sense of that word. And I just want to remind you, it is okay to start small and build a practice like this gradually. If this is brand new to you, just start with one thing like breathing, right? One thing like a few breaths a few times a day. Maybe you set a timer in your phone that says, hey, remember to breathe. And it's just your cue that you're worth taking a few deep breaths, right? Maybe you just start with starting your day by looking at the things that are on your to-do list and prioritizing them before you get started, right? In the simplest of ways, just begin, because your mental and emotional health is absolutely worth the small investment of time and the learning curve to get there. That is all for today, my friends. If you are new to the Brilliant Balance community and want to follow along with all the fun, you can catch me on Instagram at @cschoolnikki. That's where most of the goodies are on Instagram. You can subscribe to the weekly, which we mentioned earlier in this episode, and it's linked in the show notes. Great chance to keep up on all things Brilliant Balance in a curated digest once a week. You can join our Facebook community, which is the Brilliant Balance Facebook group, and we'd love to have you there. Or most simply, you can subscribe to this podcast so that you never miss an episode. Till next time, let's be brilliant.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.